Most people are gazing directly at the indicators, yet they don't perceive them. They're observing numbers, reacting to commotion, pursuing perspectives, but overlooking the communication underneath it all. Silver and gold have always communicated quietly, never loudly, never emotionally. They don't plead for attention. They reflect conduct, confidence, fear, discipline, and long-term reasoning. And presently, they're communicating something most people are completely unprepared to comprehend. I recall recognizing early on that the most substantial shifts in existence don't announce themselves. They occur while the majority is distracted. While people debate over perspectives, fundamentals continue shifting. While attention jumps from one thing to another, worth remains patient. That's how it has always been. Those who master interpreting indicators instead of headlines gain an advantage that feels almost unjust. Yet it's accessible to anyone willing to decelerate and reason. Silver and gold aren't about excitement, they're about truth. They expose the distinction between short-term reasoning and long-term vision. When people are confident, they disregard them. When people are uncertain, they rediscover them. This sequence isn't random, it reflects human psychology. It demonstrates where trust is shifting and where stability is being quietly reevaluated. Accomplished investors didn't construct prosperity by reacting. They constructed it by observing sequences others dismissed as tedious. They comprehended cycles. They comprehended that when something ancient continues to matter in modern systems, it's not accidental, it's foundational. Gold and silver don't forecast the future. They disclose the present more honestly than most indicators ever could. The genuine signal here isn't about price, it's about mentality. It's about preparedness versus dependence. People who depend entirely on external systems tend to overlook concrete worth. People who value independence tend to notice it early. This applies to currency, careers, and personal development. Those who develop abilities, assets, and discipline don't panic when circumstances transform. They adapt. Consider entrepreneurs who constructed during uncertainty. They didn't await perfect clarity. They interpreted the environment. They positioned themselves quietly. They invested in resilience instead of exaggeration. Silver and gold reward that identical mentality. They favor those who reason in decades, not weeks. Here's the practical shift most people need to make. Cease questioning what's exciting and begin questioning what's essential. Cease pursuing movement and begin constructing stability. Diversify your efforts. Protect your downside. Invest in things that don't require permission to maintain worth. That might mean allocating responsibly, decreasing unnecessary risk, or simply committing to consistent practices instead of emotional determinations. Every substantial transformation begins internally. When you train yourself to recognize indicators instead of reacting to commotion, your decision-making improves across the board. You become more composed. You become clearer. You cease rushing. That alone positions you ahead of most people. Silver and gold are signaling patience, discipline, and long-term awareness. They're reminding those who are paying attention that genuine prosperity isn't constructed by speed, but by alignment. Alignment between mentality, behavior, and time. If this communication assisted you in perceiving things differently, support the channel by engaging with the content, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who's ready to reason beyond the surface. Remain concentrated, remain grounded, and remember, those who master interpreting the indicators early don't need to rush later. Most people spend their existences responding to commotion instead of comprehending indicators. Commotion is loud, emotional, and constant. It demands immediate attention and generates the illusion that something urgent is always occurring. Indicators, conversely, are subtle. They shift slowly, quietly, and without drama. Because of this, they're frequently disregarded or misunderstood. The majority reacts to what feels intense rather than what is meaningful. Commotion thrives on emotion. It pulls people into cycles of excitement and fear, encouraging quick determinations without reflection. When individuals permit commotion to direct their behaviors, they become reactive rather than strategic. They pursue trends, perspectives, and short-term validation. Indicators don't function that way. They require patience, observation, and the capability to step back from emotional pressure. This distinction is where long-term advantage is generated. Those who master identifying indicators train themselves to pose superior questions. Instead of concentrating on what is loud, they concentrate on what is consistent. Instead of reacting to surface movement, they seek underlying sequences. This approach applies across investing, enterprise, and personal development. Quiet transformations in conduct, shifts in incentives, and long-term cycles disclose far more than sudden spikes of attention ever could. Many accomplished individuals developed this ability early. They noticed that when everyone was discussing the identical thing, opportunity was frequently already contracting. When conversation shifted elsewhere, circumstances were quietly forming. They mastered observing what was occurring behind the scenes rather than what dominated attention. This enabled them to position themselves composedly while others were distracted. Indicators require discipline to follow. They don't present instant gratification. They seldom provide immediate proof. This makes them uncomfortable for people conditioned to constant feedback. Yet this discomfort is precisely what protects indicators from being crowded. Only those willing to tolerate uncertainty benefit from them. Commotion generates urgency. Indicators generate trajectory. Urgency pushes people to act quickly, frequently without preparation. Trajectory permits people to act intentionally with clarity and confidence. When you align yourself with indicators, your determinations become less stressful because they're grounded in comprehension rather than impulse. Over time, mastering disregarding commotion reshapes mentality. You become less reactive, less anxious, and more concentrated. You cease experiencing the need to respond to everything. You select where to position attention and energy. This shift alone improves results in every area of existence. Most people never recognize how much energy they lose pursuing commotion. They confuse movement with advancement and attention with worth. Those who step away from the commotion begin perceiving the structure beneath it, the quiet forces shaping results long before they become evident. Silver and gold have never been about excitement or spectacle. They don't elevate to entertain, and they don't shift to satisfy impatience. They reflect something far deeper: how people reason, how they experience stability, and how they respond to uncertainty. When emotions shift collectively, these metals respond not as a cause, but as a mirror. That's why they disclose human conduct more clearly than almost anything else. When confidence is elevated, people tend to overlook concrete worth. They favor speed, leverage, and guarantees of expansion. In those instances, silver and gold feel unnecessary, even outdated. But when confidence quietly deteriorates, attention slowly returns to what feels solid and enduring. This shift doesn't occur overnight. It begins internally in mentality, long before it becomes visible externally. Human conduct is cyclical. Optimism expands, then contracts. Risk tolerance elevates, then diminishes. Throughout these cycles, silver and gold remain constant in their role. They don't transform to adapt to conduct. Conduct adapts to them. This consistency is what makes them such powerful indicators. They demonstrate when trust is abundant and when it's being reconsidered. Accomplished investors mastered interpreting this reflection early. They comprehended that when concrete worth is disregarded, it's frequently being undervalued psychologically, not fundamentally. They also comprehended that when attention suddenly rushes back, it's seldom at the beginning of a cycle. The reflection is clearest when emotions are quiet, not when reactions are loud. This principle extends beyond metals. In existence, the things people neglect frequently disclose their priorities. Time spent, risks accepted, and values protected all reflect internal conviction systems. Silver and gold simply express this truth in material form. They respond to how people collectively perceive security, responsibility, and long-term reasoning. Comprehending this reflection transforms how determinations are made. Instead of questioning what others are enthusiastic about, thoughtful individuals question what others are disregarding. Instead of reacting to headlines or perspectives, they observe behavioral shifts. This permits them to remain ahead of emotional waves rather than being carried by them. Silver and gold don't generate fear or confidence. They register it. They quietly document the emotional state of decision makers over time. When you master perceiving them this way, they cease being speculative and begin becoming informative. Those who comprehend this reflection become less emotional themselves. They cease pursuing movement and begin interpreting meaning. They recognize that genuine indicators aren't discovered in excitement, but in consistency. They begin trusting patience over urgency, awareness over reaction, and long-term alignment over short-term approval. Long-term thinkers function on a different frequency than those concentrated on short-term results. While most people measure achievement in days or weeks, long-term thinkers measure advancement in years and cycles. This shift in perspective transforms everything. It alters how risk is perceived, how patience is applied, and how determinations are evaluated. What feels slow to one person feels intentional to another. Short-term reasoning is driven by immediacy. It seeks reassurance, quick outcomes, and constant feedback. Long-term reasoning seeks alignment. It comprehends that meaningful results require time to develop, and that early stages frequently feel unrewarding. Because of this, long-term thinkers are willing to endure periods of uncertainty without losing conviction. This mentality permits them to notice what others overlook. When attention is scattered, they observe sequences. When the masses react emotionally, they remain analytical. They're not exempt from uncertainty, but they're less governed by it. Their determinations are rooted in preparation rather than impulse. Many of the most accomplished investors and entrepreneurs constructed their advantage by concentrating on fundamentals, while others pursued surface-level trends. They invested in assets, abilities, and systems that didn't generate immediate validation. Over time, these quiet investments compounded. And when outcomes finally became visible, they appeared sudden to outsiders, even though they were years in the creating. Long-term thinkers also comprehend that opportunity frequently conceals behind tedium. When something is exciting, it's typically crowded. When something feels uneventful, it's frequently underexplored. This awareness permits them to act when circumstances are favorable, not when excitement peaks. In existence, this perspective decreases strain. Determinations are no longer judged by short-term fluctuations. Setbacks are perceived as part of the progression rather than indications of failure. Advancement is measured by consistency rather than intensity. This generates resilience and emotional stability. Long-term thinkers are selective with their energy. They don't experience compelled to respond to every development. They select where to concentrate and where to wait. This selectivity preserves clarity and prevents burnout. It also permits superior judgment when behavior is genuinely required. Because they're not constantly reacting, long-term thinkers frequently advance before others recognize a shift is occurring. They position themselves early, not from prediction, but from comprehension. They recognize that time itself is a resource, and utilizing it intelligently is a form of leverage. While others seek confirmation, long-term thinkers seek coherence. They question whether something makes sense over time, not whether it experiences favorable in the instance. This orientation provides them access to opportunities that remain invisible to those secured into short-term reasoning. Worth seldom announces itself in dramatic ways. It develops quietly, frequently in locations where attention has diminished. While most people pursue what is popular or exciting, genuine worth is typically forming in the background, unnoticed and underestimated. This is why it becomes evident only in retrospect. By the time it's widely recognized, much of the advantage has already passed. People tend to equate visibility with importance. When something isn't being discussed, it's assumed to be irrelevant. This assumption generates blind spots. Worth doesn't require validation to exist. It expands through fundamentals, consistency, and tangible usefulness. When attention eventually returns, it feels sudden, but the foundation was established long before. Many accomplished investors and constructors comprehended this early. They mastered that the absence of excitement frequently signals opportunity rather than danger. When nobody is paying attention, prices, expectations, and competition tend to be lower. This generates space for thoughtful positioning. Acting during these quiet periods requires confidence in comprehension rather than confidence in consensus. This principle applies far beyond investing. Abilities, practices, and relationships also follow this sequence. The most impactful abilities are frequently those developed quietly over time without applause. The most powerful practices are formed without recognition. The most reliable relationships are constructed steadily, not publicly. Worth compounds in silence across every area of existence. Recognizing worth before it becomes evident requires patience and curiosity. It means examining beneath surface-level trends and posing deeper questions. Why is this being disregarded? What role does it execute beneath the surface? What occurs if attention eventually returns? These questions direct superior determinations than simply following what is popular. Most people await confirmation before acting. They desire proof that something matters. By the time proof materializes, opportunity has frequently diminished. Those who comprehend worth act on logic rather than validation. They accept uncertainty as part of the progression and trust their analysis over public perspective. When worth finally becomes visible, the shift in perception is rapid. What was once overlooked suddenly feels essential. People rush in, driven by urgency and fear of overlooking. Those who recognize worth early aren't surprised by this reaction. They anticipated it. Mastering recognizing worth early transforms how you approach determinations. You cease pursuing attention and begin constructing substance. You become comfortable advancing without applause. Over time, this generates a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on external approval. That confidence itself becomes an asset, directing you toward opportunities others only notice when it's too late. Preparation is what separates stability from impact. When people are unprepared, they're compelled to react. When they're prepared, they're capable of selecting. Most individuals await until circumstances transform before adjusting their conduct. By then, options are limited and pressure is elevated. Preparation shifts behavior earlier, when clarity is still accessible and determinations can be made composedly. Reaction is driven by emotion. It occurs under urgency and frequently leads to regret. Preparation is driven by intention. It occurs quietly, long before necessity manifests. This distinction determines results in investing, enterprise, and personal existence. Those who prepare construct buffers, systems, and abilities that absorb strain when circumstances shift. Many accomplished people adopted a mentality of readiness rather than prediction. They didn't attempt to time every transformation. Instead, they positioned themselves so that no single result could derail them. They diversified efforts, protected downside risk, and concentrated on resilience. When uncertainty materialized, they weren't scrambling, they were adjusting. Preparation decreases dependence. When resources are allocated thoughtfully, individuals depend less on external rescue. This generates confidence rooted in self-reliance. Understanding that you possess margin transforms how you respond to challenges. You reason more clearly, communicate more effectively, and avoid impulsive determinations. In practical terms, preparation appears unexciting. It may involve consistent accumulating, learning, ability development, or decreasing unnecessary exposure. These behaviors seldom generate immediate compensations. They frequently feel slow compared to reactive movements, yet over time they generate stability that reactive conduct never can. This mentality extends beyond finances. Prepared individuals invest in their health before illness compels transformation. They construct relationships before they're needed. They develop emotional governance before strain examines it. Preparation is proactive care for future versions of yourself. When circumstances shift, those who prepared advance with confidence. They're not driven by fear because they're not cornered. They possess options. They can wait, adapt, or act selectively. This adaptability is the genuine compensation of preparation. Most people underestimate how powerful readiness is because its benefits are invisible until examined. They perceive reaction as behavior and preparation as inaction. In reality, preparation is the highest form of behavior because it shapes results before pressure distorts judgment. Over time, preparation compounds into stability. Stability permits clearer reasoning. Clear reasoning leads to superior determinations. Superior determinations reinforce preparation. This cycle generates a foundation that can withstand uncertainty without panic, permitting advancement to continue even when circumstances are transforming around you. Genuine prosperity is seldom constructed by advancing rapidly. Speed generates the sensation of advancement, but it frequently bypasses the depth required for durability. Patience permits determinations to mature, strategies to prove themselves, and results to compound naturally. Those who prioritize speed tend to concentrate on short-term victories, while those who value patience concentrate on structures that can survive time. Speed is attractive because it guarantees immediate outcomes. It feeds the desire for certainty and validation. But speed frequently amplifies errors. Acting quickly leaves minimal space for reflection, adjustment, or comprehension. When determinations are rushed, they're typically directed by emotion rather than logic. Patience decelerates the progression just enough to permit clarity to emerge. In prosperity construction, patience functions hand in hand with consistency. Small, repeated behaviors applied over time generate exponential outcomes. Compounding only rewards those who permit it to function uninterrupted. People who constantly transform trajectory in search of faster results reset their advancement repeatedly. They remain occupied, but seldom advance far. Patience also transforms how risk is managed. Those who rush frequently overexpose themselves, pursuing returns without considering downside. Patient individuals construct positions gradually. They observe, adjust, and allocate with intention. This approach decreases fragility and increases resilience. When circumstances shift, patient constructors are less likely to be compelled into reactive determinations. Many accomplished investors and entrepreneurs describe extended periods where nothing exciting seemed to occur. During those periods, foundations were being established, systems were refined, abilities were sharpened. While outsiders perceived inactivity, advancement was quietly compounding. When outcomes eventually manifested, they appeared sudden, but they were the product of sustained patience. In personal development, patience is equally powerful. Abilities require time to develop. Confidence expands through repetition and experience. Those who rush mastery frequently remain trapped at a surface level. Those who permit time to instruct them develop depth that cannot be replicated quickly. Patience also protects emotional energy. Constant urgency generates strain and burnout. When everything feels immediate, judgment suffers. Patience restores balance. It permits you to step back, assess situations accurately, and respond rather than react. Genuine prosperity is constructed by aligning with time instead of combating it. Time rewards preparation, discipline, and consistency. Those who honor this relationship cease pursuing shortcuts. They concentrate on constructing things that last, comprehending that slow advancement sustained over time is far more powerful than rapid advancement that cannot be maintained. Those who interpret indicators early develop a type of confidence that doesn't require commotion to survive. It's not loud, not reactive, and not dependent on constant confirmation. While most people await certainty, early indicator interpreters accept uncertainty as part of the progression. They comprehend that clarity seldom materializes all at once. It forms gradually through observation, sequence recognition, and willingness to reason independently. Early indicator interpretation is less about prediction and more about awareness. It's the capability to notice subtle transformations before they become evident. Shifts in conduct, transformations in incentives, quiet imbalances, repeated sequences that others dismiss as irrelevant. Most people are concentrated on results. Indicator interpreters concentrate on trajectory. That distinction permits them to prepare while others are still debating. Because they act earlier, their determinations are more composed. There's no rush, no pressure to pursue, no fear of being late. When movement commences, they're not scrambling for position, they're already positioned. This generates confidence that feels grounded rather than emotional. Confidence constructed this way doesn't spike and collapse. It remains steady. Many accomplished investors and constructors describe this experience identically. When others panic, they experience composure. When others experience urgency, they experience patience. This isn't because they understand the future, but because they honored the progression early. They executed the reasoning before emotions dominated the environment. Interpreting indicators early also decreases dependence on external validation. When your determinations are based on comprehension rather than popularity, opposing perspectives don't feel threatening. You can listen without being shaken. You can adjust without abandoning conviction. This balance between openness and stability is rare, and it becomes a powerful advantage over time. In careers, those who interpret indicators early adapt smoothly. They perceive where abilities are becoming less relevant and where new worth is forming. They initiate learning before pressure compels them to transform. As a result, transitions feel natural rather than disruptive. In personal development, early awareness permits small corrections before problems compound. Confidence later is the outcome of labor executed earlier. It's constructed through preparation, not reaction. When others are seeking reassurance, early movers are reviewing options. When others hesitate, they act deliberately. There's no rush, because there's no surprise. This type of confidence transforms how existence experiences. Determinations carry less strain. Setbacks feel manageable. Advancement feels intentional. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you experience aligned with them. You advance through uncertainty with steadiness because you recognized its shape long before it materialized. Those who await certainty frequently advance rapidly, but experience unsure. Those who interpret indicators early advance slower, but with clarity. Over time, that clarity compounds into momentum that appears effortless from the exterior, even though it was constructed quietly, patiently, and well before most people recognized anything had transformed.